Yo, Toichu. Hello, and how are you? This is Chief Eagle Spirit Dancing of the Cherokee Blackfoot Cultural Circle. Dawado kuno khalia dana dakhuna diski. Um, picking up from part one. This is part two of the Native American Indians and the adoption process, past and present. Um, I wanted to pick up from where I left off. That this problem that is currently within the indigenous communities on the reservations and um, uh, within the United States itself, you know, and it is a problem. There are people complaining, but the voices are not being heard, being squelched, if you will. Reason being, as I said before, there have been such, comments made by others in history's past. Kill the Indian, save the man. It seems that this process, uh, it's still basically is on that same track or that same mentality, that same thinking process, because what they're doing is they're trying to kill the Indian completely. And how do you do that? How do you do that? You remove them. You remove them from their base, their cultural base, their families, any linkage that would give them a foundation to stand on from an indigenous perspective or point of view, and give them a launching pad to say, look, this is my country. This country was stolen from Native American Indians. They, and with regards to non-natives, they don't want to hear natives echo the or reverberate the sounds of their forefathers. We will fight to the last to keep our and preserve our territories, our lands. And now we are being attacked culturally, um, and it has been going on for so long. They have adopted, ironically enough, other ways, because they couldn't kill us anymore, outright anyway. So they had to adopt other ways to kill us, and the worst form of death is spiritually, mental death, and they have succeeded almost to the point of our extermination, almost, almost. But I am living proof today that they cannot put out that fire. They will do everything that they can. So, touching on issues regards to adoption in the Native Americans, around the country, on the West Coast, there are reports out of reservations, that these things are going on in the Midwest. Um, I haven't heard anything on the East Coast, even though I wouldn't be surprised, if such things are going on. Now, I was put up for adoption, again, reflecting off of part one. I was put up for adoption. Wow, at the age of I believe 3, and it took a couple of years before someone actually got a hold of me. Now, my family's history is unique because I have white in my family, I have Indian in my family, and I have black people in my family. I am a mixture, but the end result was uh, I reserve the right to maintain my indigenous heritage because it encompasses both sides of my my parents. My mother and father are of Native descent, and for for my identity's sake, uh, I chose, after 36 years, I chose to adopt my Native rights, because in fact it is embedded within my family structure, and I feel that culturally it benefits me. Culturally, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, it gives me foundation. Pardon, pardon me. I have my son with me, so bear with me. Tecumseh. Yeah. So, pardon me. That it's giving me some foundation, some serious, footing, and I haven't heard too many people argue with me on that because they tell me, well, you look Indian, so they can't fight you. You have your proof now, which undoubtedly I do. I've gone on to ancestry.com and I've gotten pictures of my native, you know, um, ancestors going back all the way to the early 1800s, and irrefutable proof that my DNA is linked with Native American Indians in this country. Again, on both sides of my family. Um, you know, so I don't need anyone to come telling me, oh, you need blood test. As far as I'm concerned, excuse my language here, they can go to hell. You know, because they made it so difficult for us. I'm gonna digress just a little bit. They made it so difficult for many of us who are of a darker hue, particularly, especially of those who are quote unquote African American, Native American Indian mix. They made it more difficult for that particular group, which I am a part of, saying that if you're black, you can't be Indian. And I said this in my Red Indian myth. And I'm not going to touch on too much of that, but it corresponds, and or should I say correlates. But for my family's sake, my family's sake, that it is something that I do not need verification from someone else to tell me who I am. I've had enough of that. They uh, would like to be able to tell me who I am, because then it gives them the power. I'm not giving them the power. I'm taking it from them, taking it out of their hands and putting it back into mine. And I'm saying, you know, um, this is a part of me. I don't need your testing, some laboratory rat for you to tell me who I am. So again, and this was a part of the adoption, process, because so many of us, you know, have been adopted. There are a lot of Native Americans who have been adopted and traumatized as a result of their, experiences. Finding out much later on in their lives that they were Native, not knowing it early on. You know, and I have, it's funny. I have yet to see a black family that has adopted a Native American Indian. Um, I'm talking, when I say this, I'm not talking about one who's mixed like myself, a so-called pure blood Native, as there are really any left. There aren't many. There might be some, but there aren't many. Those percentages are very low because of all the mixing that has gone on. Now, I would go so far as to say that in the Pueblo areas, the Yaqui, Ute, the Ute Indians, and like the ones who are darker, those Indians have maintained some of their original identities in color. You can see it. Some of the Indians in Arizona who haven't mixed that much with white people or anyone else, you can see that in that particular genome or phenotype. You can see it within that they have kept their DNA. And I'm not necessarily pure, but they've kept to themselves. I don't like the word pure. It denotes something holy. As the DNA is pure, therefore you're pure. I don't agree with that. I'm just saying that they've kept their families intact. They haven't gone outside, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But to suggest that people who are of a mixed identity, they are less Indian. When I think that's just the opposite. Um, that the people who adopt our ideals. There's a word adoption again. Adopting means to take something that didn't initially belong to you and give it a new face or different identity. It basically depends, because if I'm going to adopt a child and that child comes from a different lineage, that means I am adopting him, but to give him a new lineage. Now, does that make me right to do that? That's like putting a zebra in a horse stables and calling it a horse. When we know it's a zebra, you can obviously tell a zebra's different. So our people have to learn that our children, and as much as we have suffered as a people, you know, uh, and I wasn't born on a reservation. I grew up in a middle class neighborhood. My suffering was urban. I went through the perils of you know conflicts, that everyday kids grow up in, in an urban environment. But in the reservations, the suffering was more destitution, and the lack of resources, and ultimately respect by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, uh, the government's responsibility to care for and look after indigenous people, especially after they have been virtually conquered and displaced on their own lands, and being treated with such disdain and disrespect is unparalleled in the annals of history anywhere on the earth. That a people have been treated so harshly, even to this very day. So, the adoptions, uh, in its true merit and responsibility, is a good thing. But here we have something vile and vicious taking place, um, stripping, and I'm not saying this of every adopting family. There are families who want to supplant that child that they're taking from the indigenous community, to supplant that child with their indigenous culture. There are some, very few. There are some. I'm talking of the overall picture, that those have it in mind to, no, I'm not going to teach this child anything about that. I'm just going to give them a loving home and forget about the culture and identity, and that's that, and let's leave it and keep it moving. I have problems and issue with those type of adopting principles, so-called principles. I have serious issue with that, and it's something that needs to be addressed and looked at. And indigenous peoples on the reservations in particular need to address um, uh, government agents, bureaucrats, people who are involved with the taking of our children and putting them. You see, me being adopted, I have two lovely children, my son Tecumseh and my daughter Amina Lakia. I love them very much, and I'm giving them everything that I was not given, which is the spiritual blood of culture and language. Um, and that's important to keep them whole. Like, again, and I say this because what has happened on the reservations, and other Indians who are suffering mental and emotional and spiritual declines, because of not knowing who they were, or knowing who they were and realizing that they're suffering and there's no recourse for them. Um, it's sad, because these things aren't addressed the way they should be, because the problem here lies in the self. It lies in the ability to say, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. We're going to step up. We're going to be responsible and take care of our own children. But the destitution problem is so severe in certain areas of the country with regards to these reservations, that they are not themselves